Welcome, welcome, welcome to our English-Speaking Union Happy Hour Basket of Hope, Finding Success Beyond Setbacks with Dr. Gideon For-mukwai. Today's happy hour is sponsored by the Seattle branch of the English-Speaking Union, as well as the Washington branch of the English-Speaking Union as well. As ideas for these lectures come from you, our members and viewers, please share any ideas or topics for an upcoming speaker or talk using the survey that will appear at the end of our program this evening. Before we get into that program, I wanted to make a couple of quick announcements. After the presentation, after Gideon finishes his presentation, we will be holding a question and answer session. You can enter your question into either the Q&A module or the chat module. Buttons to those are at the bottom of your screen. You can do this at any point during the lecture, the talk. You don't have to wait until the very end during the question and answer portion. We will get to questions in the order received, and we've allotted around 15 minutes for questions. I also want to take a moment to recognize the branches with the most registered members for this ESU Happy Hour. So a special recognition to the Central Florida branch, the New York branch, and the Charlottesville branch. Now, to really start us off today, I'd like to welcome the former president of the ESU Seattle branch and former ESU National Board member, Bill Mashmeyer. Bill?
Welcome. As this is a happy hour, we have the official drink of Cameroon, which is the native country of Gideon, our speaker today. So if you have a Heineken, pop one. Gideon has a fascinating story to tell. He is the most recent new member of the Seattle branch. He has had a long and circuitous route to get here, recently moved from DC to Oregon. Was not aware that there was an Oregon branch, so he joined Seattle, and we are happy to have him. He is actually physically located about halfway between Seattle and Portland, so that works out very well. How he got to the ESU specifically is also an interesting story. Having been in DC, he linked up with Mai Nur, who eventually convinced him that it would be a good thing to join the ESU. Mai was working at the Cosmos Club. The last time we all were able to get together without mass trepidation in the wonderful conference that was held in DC at the Cosmos Club. And we all look forward to that sort of event again. But I would like to introduce Mbai to begin with, and he can take it from there and go on to introduce our speaker.
Okay, great. Bill, thank you so much for your warm welcome. Josh and Karen, thank you so much for putting this together. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mbai Ndour. I'm originally from Senegal. For those that attended the last year ESU international event in DC, we've probably met or exchanged email since I was working alongside Karen Blair and Barney in putting the event together. So when Karen reached out to me about revitalizing the DC branch and bringing new members on board, I could not think of a better person to invite than our speaker for this evening. A man I met through a leadership workshop I attended while working at the Cosmos Club. A man that has a unique way of conveying messages through storytelling. A man whose story about his extensive travel throughout the world will not only inspire you, but will urge you to be the best version of yourself. A man I have gotten closer to over the years, who I now call my friend. So without further ado, I present to you Dr. Gideon For-mukwai. Gideon, you can take it away.
Wow. Where do I start? Perhaps I should start with a famous commercial from Capital One. Now, I don't work for Capital One, but a famous commercial in which Samuel L. Jackson exalts the qualities of a credit card. He says, "This is the Quicksilver cashback card from Capital One with unlimited returns for every purchase, everywhere, every damn day." And he goes on to ask, what's in your wallet? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for inviting me to share some ideas with you. What's in your wallet is none of my business. What's in your basket is part of my business. So today, I hope to ask this question, what's in your basket, over and over. I hope that in some little way, I can bring the importance of this basket to your awareness so that you can always tap into what's hidden and shrouded in this basket so you can take it out there into the world. Talking about baskets, I want to take you to a tiny little village located in the heartlands of Africa, a village in which you have by far more cattle up on the mountains than people down in the valley, a village in which you have more squirrels and beavers running around than children in the schoolyard. But it's also a village in which every mother is your mother, every father is your father. In that village, I first learned that if you can fix a broken market, fortify your basket. That occurred to me several years ago, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to first of all say thank you to Karen, to Mbaye, to Bill, and to you, Josh, and all the members for allowing me to come into your private spaces this day virtually to share some ideas with you. You see, when Karen first asked me a couple of months ago, Gideon, would you like to share some thoughts? I said, yeah, sure, I can. But then as the months passed by and she started to remind me, I started to wonder, but my goodness, what am I going to possibly say to the English speaking union? What do I possibly know that would intrigue or excite or inspire somebody? And it started to dawn on me that I probably had said yes too soon. And I started to get really worried, thinking and rethinking my message. And as the days drew by, I was getting increasingly troubled by what would I say. But in any case, last night, I can tell you that I started to sweat and perspire quite a little bit. Like, what would I say? Matter of fact, I woke up this morning to my greatest shock. I'd lost all my hair. However, this morning, when I went for my walk, my wife, it dawned on me that Gideon, relax. Don't take it too seriously. All you have to do is share your 2 cents with the members of the English speaking union and let them take that and marinate it and add their 100 cents to it. And hopefully it will be something a little bit better. So once again, I want to take you to my tiny little corner of the world in Central Africa, Cameroon, where I want to say, yes, alcohol is part of our religion, I'm sorry to say. Not exactly Heineken, but they got something called 33 Export, which is a French word that means 33 export. It's our fanciest drink ever. And there are a lot of other beers that flourish in Cameroon more than anywhere else, I would say. Some years ago, we were the second per capita country in the world in the consumption of alcohol. I wish I could say the same of other things. But nonetheless, one of the greatest gifts that Cameroon gave me was an awareness that the world is bigger than just the confines of my village. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been given a promise to receive a special present? And when you ask, when can I have this special present? You were told, yes, you can get it after 10 years. 10 years? Now, what kind of present is that? Somebody wants to give you a present in 10 years. Is that the forbidden fruit or what? No, it wasn't the forbidden fruit. So when I implored my mom to tell me when I was going to get this special present, she said 10 years. And I was still a little kid. I grew up, and when I turned 10, she said, time has come for us to go to that distant market so that you can get that special present. The day before the market day, we spent the whole morning and afternoon harvesting potatoes, harvesting peanuts, harvesting chili peppers and pumpkins, and we put them all in one basket. We call it the basket of hope. Hope because from that basket, the whole family had to have something to eat. On the morning of the market day at 5:30 a.m., my mother knocked on the door. I was like astonished. Said, little boy, wake up, let's go. So I woke up reluctantly and she said, get your basket and let's go. And I carried my basket. Just like my mom, each one of us, we carried our baskets and we started on a journey to a very distant market. Now, don't try this at home. A journey that was not the easiest of journeys for me. Because outside, it was cold, it was dark, and it was windy. Up through the mountains, down through the valleys, in through the forest, and out through several rivers. I was sick and tired of the endless walking. At one moment, I recall standing and saying, Mom, how long will it take before we arrive at the market? Mom looked back to me and said, little boy, it's going to take us 5 mountains, 5 valleys, and until we see a rainbow. I freaked out. Rainbow? Will I still be alive by the time we arrive? Mom said, relax. Can't you see the other little boys like you? Some of them are younger than you. Don't be spoiled. Come, let's go. Don't you want that special present? I said, Mom, of course, sure, I want it. She said, then come along. We continued our journey up through the mountains, down through the valleys, in through the valleys, and out through several rivers. It was a long and tortuous journey until we got to a river that had no bridge. And my question to you is, what do you do if you have to get across a river and the river's bridge has been blown away? I was totally petrified, but Mom had no time for all of that. She said, come along. She held onto my hand, and one step at a time, we walked through the freezing cold water of River Tibu. One step at a time, as we went further and further, the current was stronger. As we went closer to the other edge, I was more petrified because I'd never done anything like that. But I held on tightly to her hand until we got through to the other side. It was a very long and difficult journey. But I have to say, it was also a formative journey. As luck would have it, when we arrived at the market, we sold all our produce in less than an hour. So the moment came for us to go and manifest that present this little boy has been waiting for more than 10 years. Mom said, first things first, we got to get some salt for the family. We got to get some fish for the family. We'll get some books. And we did honor all of that. We ended up buying some old, beat up, stained with grease, lubricants, all kinds of grease, oil stained books for me, secondhand books. And in the course of getting the salt, the fish, and the old beat up textbooks, Mom had little remaining. But we weaved our way through this crowded market to the other side. where you have a giant oak tree. This oak tree, by the way, we could call this section of the market the Nordstrom Rack. We could call it the JC Penney's. You could call it the Macy's. Why? Because that's where they sell clothing, they sell shoes. In my excitement, I dropped down and I said, Mom, I love this pair of shoes. I love this pair of shoes. If I recall, was a Disco 83 pair of sneakers. I said, I love it. I love it. Mom, can you get this for me? He said, can you try it on? I bent over and tried the pair of shoes. Mom, I love it. It fits so neatly. And then Mom reached into her wallet, pulled it out, and then she froze for a moment, looking at me in terror. Like, Mom, please, can you get it? She said, wait a minute, how much is the price? She got the price again, and she realized we had the equivalent of $2 US. That's about 800 francs CFA. But it was not enough to get a pair of shoes for me that day. So I broke down, crying at the center of the market, Mommy, please do something about this. I am so sick and tired of walking barefooted. I cannot wait anymore. Please, Mom, do something about this. I'm so sick and tired. I hate this market. I hate this market. I will never come to this market. Choking back her tears, Mom came from behind and put her arms around me and said, little boy, my son, please don't cry so loud. If I can afford it, you'll be the first to know. And remember, if we can fix a broken market, all we can do is fortify our basket. I don't think I understood the meaning of that. I was so broken because my feet were half frozen and half swollen. And the journey back home was a very long one. Needless to say, it took about 3 more weeks of savings for my mom, who was a widow, before we could afford my first pair of shoes. But when I finally had them, I made sure that everybody in the village knew that I had my first pair of shoes. I was dancing from door to door, door knocking, and telling everybody that I had my first pair of shoes. It was a defining moment for me. But today, I'm not trying to talk about shoes. Because when I checked a few days ago, I realized, oh my goodness, I have well over a dozen pairs of shoes in my closet. And I could have 2 dozen, 3 dozens. I could have 100 pairs of shoes. But the question is, how many of them can I wear at the same time? Of course, just one. So I feel I have become very shoe successful. I've become very successful in the area of shoes. Maybe I'm still working on other areas. I could put Imelda Marcos to shame when it comes to the idea of getting as many shoes as possible, or Marie Antoinette of France. But life is not about shoes. Life is about looking deep into our baskets and finding what special gifts we bring into the world and seeing whether we can share that with others so that they too can make themselves better off. So I want to reach deep into my basket because Mom said, if you can fix a broken market, reach deep into your basket and fortify it. And whenever I look into my basket, I realize there's so many items. Anybody can go into the chat and tell us, what do you think is inside this little item here? Go into the chat box if you can. Type, what do you think is inside this little item here? I don't want it to be to be one-sided. If you can, please. Okay, somebody says glasses. That's a great idea. That's from Gideon. Who else? Is that the only person seeing? I see from Brian. Thank you. Okay, 2 people can see this. Okay, well, the more you look closer, the more you realize that other kinds of things can come out of big shells or big containers. What I have in here are pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds. Thank you, Phil. Pumpkin seeds to me are so important because they are a symbolism for the things that you and I ought to be doing to make the world a better place. You see, one of the reasons why I believe I'm here is because my mom was very generous at planting. Thank you, I got you, dear today. My mom was very good at planting seeds. One moment I will never forget was probably around 1982. I was getting ready to go to school, which is several miles away, walking barefooted. Mom came back into the house, literally sobbing. I asked her, Mom, what's the deal? What's the problem? What's going on? Myself, my sisters, and my cousins were worried. Mom was holding a letter in hand. She had gone to our nearby neighbor to get their son to read that letter to Mom. This letter was written by Mom's younger brother in the city. And this man the neighbor had turned my mom away with that letter in hand, telling her, why can't you have your own children read your own letters? Forgetting the fact that my elder siblings were all out of the home. And me and the other ones, we were about 10, we were about 11, and we couldn't read. Mom could not read or write. She came back with a letter in hand, literally sobbing. But she did not fight back with that gentleman. All she did was encourage us as much as possible to do well in school, which I wasn't doing too well. But I must say, around the year 1986, I stumbled on an incredible book that changed the course of my life. I don't know about you, but one of the finest books I've ever read is The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer came into my life at a time when I was not interested in education, but it lit up a fire in myself, in my heart, that I could not resist. And I think I credit every other book that I've read to The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, because I felt strongly like Mark Twain wrote that book about my own life or about me. I went around telling everybody in the village that I was the African Tom Sawyer. I would get all kinds of quotes from Tom Sawyer, his dealings with Huckleberry Finn, and I'll even go right on my door, the Black Revenge of the Caribbean Seas, which I believe is one of the quotes that I got from The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. And I would take so much pride in it, never mind the fact that some of the other kids in the village had not read that book. That book transformed me. And I think that the fact my mom encouraged me to read, encouraged us with school, she was actually sowing a seed. And I want to say to you today that whenever someone snubs at you, do not fight back. When they treat you spitefully, do not fight back. Look deep into your basket and ask yourself, what kind of seeds do I have in here that I can sow and nurture them so that these seeds can grow and flourish tomorrow? Because the last time I looked, with all due respect to the neighbor and his family, I am delighted to say my mother's encouragement against all my stubbornness has paid off big time, not only on me, but also on my cousins who took our education seriously. And thanks to that education, we're able to connect today and speak a language that I love. Even though I grew up speaking 2 or 3 African languages, went to school and studied 18 years in French. I thought I was going to conquer the world with French. I was really good in French, only to realize when I started traveling that the world doesn't care so much about French. French is a declining language. But my point here being, when you are snubbed, when you're treated spitefully, don't fight back. Sow your seeds, because those seeds will grow and flourish and tell the truth about what lies deep in you. So that's the first element that I want to share with you. I'll share a couple of maybe 2 or 3 more stories. But the first one reminds us that if you have not read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, please do yourself a favor. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. How many of us on this forum today have read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer? Please go into the chat box and put a yes, because I don't want to talk. I don't want to be talking alone to the screen. I'd rather be seeing you in person rather than talk looking at my screen and not seeing anybody. How many of you have read? I can see 1 yes from Joanne. I see yes from Maureen. I see, is that all? Am I the only one who is so excited about The Adventures of Tom Sawyer? I see it from Jane. I see it from Henry. Awesome. Now, I went on to read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and thank you, Brian. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Dieudonné. Thank you, Alice. I went on to read all these other books, but no other book has ever come so close to my heart like The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. So in essence, it is important to read as widely as possible. Somebody writes a book in America, centered in America, but it touches a kid in Africa in a special way. That is a seed. That writing is a seed. The language we use is a seed that we can use to grow more, to grow crops. And those crops could be people, those crops could be ideas, those crops could be other things. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The second experience that I want to share with you is the fact that in this world, we all will have to face skunks. Yes, we face the snobs. We also have to face skunks. The skunks are the people that they spray something snobbish, they spray something, a stench, they spray a dirty, bad odor at you when you least expect. And what should you do when you face those ones? Don't fight back. And I speak from experience. I know it's painful, it's challenging, but I'll never forget in Florida, 2006, I had gone up to a lady whom I respected so much, and I asked for her help to be my coach when I just came to America, needed help to grow professionally in the world of training and in the world of speaking. She was a fine lady, but one day she said something to me that really stuck with me all along. She said, Gideon, I'm sorry to tell you this. The only thing that might hold you back in America is your accent. It was painful. Maybe I already knew it, but I thought that my accent could be an asset. But what she was telling me, even though she was my coach, was that my accent can be a liability. And for many years, I lost my voice. I stopped speaking publicly. I stopped engaging with people. I was doubting myself. Did I make the wrong decision to move from Singapore to America? I thought by coming to America, I was going to find a bigger playing field. I was going to learn from more people. But it looks like nature was conspiring against me. And if she was kind enough to tell me maybe it's true, I started to believe her. Later on, when I went to graduate school in Reno, Nevada, I was part of a public speaking group called Toastmasters. Very active, got along well with everybody. And it was a very good time. But one day, a lady was evaluating my work, and I had mispronounced the word. Go into the chat box. Here's a word for someone who is not educated, who cannot read or write. What is the word? Please go into the chat box. Glad to know that Gideon is also from Cameroon. Thank you very much. Now, if you go into the chat box, there's a word that describes somebody who cannot read or write. It starts with I. What's the name of that word? Thank you, Gideon. Thank you. It is illiterate. But growing up in a culture that is predominantly French and trying as much as possible to be French, trying as much as possible to do anything that I could to learn other languages, including German and Chinese and so on, I've not always paid a lot of attention to the minute nuances of pronouncing every English word. So I pronounced it as illiterate. And that lady came really hard on me. She said, how dare you pronounce the word illiterate as illiterate? How dare you? She literally, she tore me apart publicly. And it was a very painful experience because I thought I didn't do it in a way that was spiteful. I was just being my natural self. But the way she evaluated me took a heavy toll on me. And I started to question my identity. I started to question myself. I started to doubt myself. Should I even speak anymore? I was barely recovering from the bruises of what happened in Florida. Now you come, you tell me I can't pronounce the word illiterate. And I'm telling myself, what if, God forbid, I had said Illuminati? What if I slaughtered it completely? What if I said something worse than illiterate? All right. It was tough, but luck was on my side. A few weeks down the line, a gentleman by name Mike Sollins, he wrote an email to me. He said, I would like you, Gideon, to know most of the members of our club did not share the view of that woman, did not share the view of the way she addressed you. We don't think that you did it deliberately. We don't think that there was anything wrong in the way that you said it. So please take comfort. and don't be discouraged. I have to say, it was very painful for me to come out of that again. Not only was I questioning my accent, my identity, losing my voice, I was beginning to ask myself, of what need should I even try? And in the last few years, I'll be honest with you, I've been on the road, and that's how I got to meet Mbaye, my brother from Senegal. I met Mbaye in DC. I was running a seminar in DC for a national company, a national training organization. And I would go from city to city to city running leadership and communication workshops. And somewhere in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, a lady also did not take my accent. She probably didn't find something good about it. And once again, the first try, she said something that was very uncomfortable. I kept quiet. The second time, I kept quiet. The third time, she publicly told me again in a room with almost 40 people that, Gideon, we don't say vulnerable, we say vulnerable. And the way that she put it was so pointed. Now, it's always important to be willing to learn. But when you make the other person come across as though they are so little and so invisible and so incompetent, it undermines communication. Because it was the third time on the same day, I felt like it was time for me to at least speak up. And I came out of my shell and I said to her, I appreciate your words. I appreciate your suggestions. However, if I had to sit in my room and make sure that I clean up every word, I make sure that I can pronounce every single word the way that Americans do, I will never step out of my room. And so for that matter, I will be out there, I will be speaking, I'll be doing all that I can. And if I can succeed to improve over time, I will do that. But I'm not going to cower because of your words. And literally, it looked like there were people in the room that shared my viewpoints. They started cheering from the back. It looks like people had noticed that this was a little bit overbearing. What's my point of sharing this? My point of sharing this is that whether you are a speaker of this beautiful language, what is a second language for you, a third language, or a fourth language in my case, all I'm saying is, please, let's make room for everybody. Let's make room for others who may not necessarily have a mastery of this language as you do. Let's make room for more people under this tent, because through this beautiful language, we can exchange a lot of ideas from all corners, from all shadows, from all parts of the world. So if you have someone whom I call a skunk, excoriating your ability to speak, all you should do is plant more seeds. Plant more seeds and water your seeds, because the water would wash away the stench. I kept on speaking, and I've been fortunate that I've done it competitively. I've placed number 1, I've placed number 2, I've placed number 3 in all kinds of places, from California to Nevada to right here in Oregon, where I currently live. I don't want to be shy of trying to share my ideas. I will continue doing it, however imperfect it may be. So don't stop sharing your ideas. Don't stop watering your seeds. Let it grow. I never for a minute thought I would be speaking to the English Speaking Union. How could I? My English is not perfect, but here we are. So thank you, Baye. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Bill. Thanks to the English Speaking Union. Let's keep moving. The next point I want to share with you has to do with dealing with xenophobes, people that prejudge you, people that want to stereotype you or your English or your ability to communicate. So growing up in Cameroon, I was somewhat okay with the local languages. But when I went to Asia, I had to learn Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. First, my first stopover was in South Africa, which has 11 official languages. I had to learn Setswana. I had to learn some Afrikaans so that I could make friends. I could get out there and interact with people without staying behind the walls. I learned a bit of that, fairly comfortable with it, not so much. Went to Asia, I had to work as a fire captain. So I have a team of 35 who look up to me every single day. And I didn't want somebody speaking behind my back. So I learned Hokkien, which is a Chinese dialect. I learned Mandarin Chinese, and I learned Bahasa Melayu, which is spoken in Malaysia and some parts of Indonesia. And it was challenging, but it was also very, very enriching in the sense that I got to have my eyes, my ears into another culture in a way that a foreigner would not have access to. When I left my firefighting job, I started getting scouted to perform in national TV programs. And I was beginning to make headways. I was beginning to get recognized. And people would talk to me about, oh, Gideon, we saw you on national TV. You were acting. I'm like, yeah, cool, thank you. On one occasion, a lady called me and said, Gideon, I got the perfect role for you. You're going to love this role so much. I was like, yeah, my mouth was watering. I was thinking, this is the greatest role I'll probably have. And I asked her, ma'am, what's the role? She said she wanted me to act the role of a Nigerian con man. I don't know about you, but I was kind of like, okay, is that really a perfect role? Was I being stereotyped in some way? In any case, I went and acted that role. 3 weeks later, she called me again. She said, Gideon, never mind the previous one. I got the perfect role for you. You're going to love this so much. It's the perfect role. I'm like, what is the role? She said, it is an immigrant from Africa who is involved in theft in China. Man, that was a little heavy. I thought about it like, okay, I don't want to perpetuate, I don't want to propagate this stereotyping that's going on here. So I turned it down. I said, no, I'm not going to be, I've done Nigerian con man. Now I'm going to be doing an African petty thief in China. No, forget it. Give the money to somebody. Never mind the fact that I needed the money. I turned it down. And she did not call me for well over 3 months. I was beginning to think, oh my goodness, my Hollywood career from the Asian, from the Oriental angle is beginning to crumble. No word for 3 months. Until one day, I got another call. And they said, Gideon, we got a perfect role for you. You're going to love this. It's a natural fit. I was skeptical. So when I asked her, what role do you have for me? And she said, Somalian pirate. I don't know about you, but it started to look like every single role that I was going to be getting was one that would be stereotypical. And if you know anything about Africa, and with all due respect to my Somalian brothers, I do not even look like a Somalian. Somalians are a little skinnier. They're a little more lean, muscled. And I'm short, stodgy, and stocky. Why would anybody think that I look like a Somalian? Just because a guy looks black doesn't mean that he's Somalian. Now, I felt like, do I look like the guys in the movie called Captain Phillips? I don't think so. But it was yet another learning opportunity for me. And so I'm asking you, what do you do when the world stereotypes you? What do you do when the world is trying to throw a blanket over you? Do you quit? Do you run away? That's exactly what I wanted to do. But a young friend of mine from China, he said something to me that I'll never forget. He said to me, Gideon, he who acts the role of a fool is not a fool. And those words have stayed with me for quite some time. And so today I want to send it back to you, or push it back to you and say, when they ask you to play the role of someone you don't necessarily like, play that role, but play it exceptionally well to the point whereby you get some notoriety from it. How do I know? When I acted the role of a Nigerian conman, do you know how many parents came to me, parents of students that I was teaching in Singapore? They said, we saw you on national TV. We saw you on national TV. Everybody was talking about it. It was very impressive. We saw it on the big screen. But when I acted the role of an African ambassador, wore a very fine African traditional regalia, like the type that my Senegalese brothers wear very much, nobody commented about it. Nobody talked about the elegance of that. But it talked a lot about me acting the role of a Nigerian conman. And with all due respect to my Nigerian brothers, yes, they do have some folks that are involved in in scamming, but the vast majority of a country of 180 million, they're not scammers, they're not con men. And so my point here is, when the xenophobes stereotype you, it's time for you to nurture your seeds, to germinate and grow and sprout and grow in other areas. So much so that they can never understand, they can never know which seed is going to grow. Overwhelm. Be so good. Be better. Be bigger than the stage that they're giving you. That's why, in many ways, I do not limit my pursuits to acting, to drama. I've started doing one-man shows right here in US, exploring historical characters deep into American history. Guys like York of the Lewis and Clark expedition. I don't wait for somebody to tell me what role I should play. I find a character with whom I identify and study it day and night for 2 years and write a piece which I can share with the rest of the world, so that nobody should tell me what role I could play and what role I can't play. Yes, you're going to run into snobs. They treat you spitefully. Yes, you're going to run into skunks. The skunks going to excoriate you. Yes, you run into xenophobes. And the xenophobes will try to undermine your message or the beauty of the seeds that lie hidden in your basket. But you cannot allow them to win. You got to continue striving. You got to continue moving. You got to continue finding other avenues for you to grow. Now, I want to transition to my next point, which has to do with the days when you meet the Samaritans. Because let's be honest, not everything that happens in the world is negative. And I don't want you to walk from here thinking that, oh, Gideon is the Messiah of the negative. No, not that. I have met with far more good, awesome people on my journey, whether it's in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, in Middle East, or here in America. Far more good people than those ones that try to snub, spite, and excoriate you. The Samaritans are the people that really make the world evolve. And I'm not even in any way saying that I too have not made some of the mistakes that they too have made. Yes, I have my own fair share. I have my own fair share of prejudice, which is very part and parcel of my humanity. How else can you define this than prejudice on my own part? Several years ago, I was flying back from Switzerland to Africa. Prior to that, I think it was the year 2000, I had been visiting different parts of China. I've been visiting China, exploring an opportunity to work for a Boston-based company in China. And it was my first time in China. And growing up, I never thought that one day I'd go to China. It was just something that was out of the circumference of the thinking of the people with whom I grew up. Nobody had ever traveled overseas. But there I was, getting a lot of opportunities and offers to go to places nobody in my family had ever gone, which was a huge respect. So when I've been to China, I could not stop telling everybody that I'd been to China. I called my auntie, I let her know I've been to China. I called my uncle, I let them know I've been to China. I called my friends from wherever they were, like, hey, dude, I'm just returning from Shanghai. I'm just returning from Shenzhen. It was a fascination of mine. I made sure that I had as many pictures taken in China, because probably it was something that was so far out, so far-fetched, that I wanted to touch everybody and let them know, hey, I've been to China. And in that same blindness of excitement, on the flight from Zurich to Africa, I'd come from Asia with an Asian-looking guy sitting next to me. And we were on the same flight from Asia to Zurich and from Zurich to Cameroon. I could not hesitate to tell this guy, hey, you know what? I've been to your country. He looked at me like, okay, which country are you referring to? And I proudly said, China. He said, I am an American. What are you talking about? It was the most humbling experience of my life. In my blind excitement, I thought every Oriental looking person was Chinese. I wanted to let everybody know that I've been to China. And there I was. I was the victim. I too made the same mistakes that I probably say others make. And so I want to ask you to also reflect. Do you make the same mistakes? Do you allow yourself to also acknowledge? I had to apologize for that to that guy profusely. And I will be the first to tell you, I know it's not possible to say that Black people blush, but on that day, I am absolutely sure I was the first Black guy from Africa that blushed publicly on a flight from Zurich to Cameroon. It was humiliating, but it taught me a larger understanding of the world. Do not put somebody into a small box because you don't know which box they come from. But I want to say the point about Samaritans is not about those that prejudge you. It's also about those that sometimes will prejudge people positively. Because on another occasion, I was flying from Charles de Gaulle in Paris to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And that flight was going to continue, was a Qantas flight, an Australian airline, from Charles de Gaulle to Kuala Lumpur, and then on to Sydney, Australia. On board the flight, there are like 200 people. For some reason, I think I was probably, maybe there were just 2 or 3, 4 people of African descent or Blacks. And somewhere around 20 minutes into the flight attendants came to me and they tapped on my shoulder. They said, "Sir, you speak French?" I said, "Bien sûr, bien sûr." I said, "Yeah, sure, I do." And then they asked me, "Can you help us? Do you speak English?" I said, "I think I do." They said, "We need your help. We need your help so badly. Can you come with us?" I was like, "What is the deal?" They said, "Come with us." So we went into the first class. There was a lady. Of course, I was sitting at the back where I usually sit. I was sitting economy. That's where my means permits me to. So we went to the first class. We talked to this French lady who was flying from France through Kuala Lumpur to Sydney. She was frantic. She was sweating. She was perspiring. She was in a state of, she was in a breakdown. Come to think about it, she was telling us that she had forgotten a bag with $20,000 inside at the airport in Paris. And by whatever means they thought I was the one guy on flight that could speak both English and French, I don't know whatever means they used, but those guys, I think they were good Samaritans because I ended up translating what the lady was talking about frantically. And they transmitted the message to the captain. And the captain finally communicated with the airport in France. And about 20 more minutes into the flight, they came and tapped on me and they said, "Sir, thank you very much. Thank you very much. We were able to help that lady. The bag has been recovered." I was delighted. I was so happy. I felt like Superman. Like, this is a skill that was like so normal to me. This was it was a basic 101 thing. It didn't take any effort at all. But I was able to help someone thanks to the same prejudgments that sometimes can put us on the other side. My point here being, sometimes the Samaritans elevate us. And yes, it's a good thing when they elevate us and give us a platform to help someone. But we must use that platform in a way that could serve or to inspire some other person. But I must say, my wife asked me, "Okay, you help them, $20,000. Pretty cool. How about you ask her, ma'am, $20,000 saved. How about I get a 1K, a 2K, was for all the years that you spent in school studying English and French and German and all the other languages? How about a drink?" Now, I never asked that from the lady, which was none of my business. It was not in my character. I know my wife was joking, but my point I want to make here is that when the Samaritans elevate you, do something that continues to open up the windows of trust for the rest of the world. Because every now and then, someone is in need. That person could be someone else. That person could also be you. Now, I want to start wrapping up here because I know that time is of essence. And so I want to go back and just recap the few elements that we've talked about. We've talked about the importance of recognizing that the snobs will snub you and they'll treat you spitefully, but we should not allow them to dictate the tone of what you have to do. When they treat you spitefully, plant your seeds because the seeds will rise. I believe that I am my mother's seed. And if I go to my village with all humility, with all convictions, I can do a lot more than that neighbor who was treating my mother spitefully for being unable to read or write. She was a widow. She didn't have a child who could read at the time, but I bet you I can read in almost a number of languages now. So plant your seed. Number two, when you meet with the snobs, and the snobs, when you meet with the skunks, and the skunks excoriate you, please do not fight with them. Pour some water, wash off the stench, and keep moving. And number three, I talked about the importance of dealing with the xenophobes in ways that would overwhelm them, outgrow their stage, outgrow their presence, and extend your influence into other areas. And last but not least, I want to say every now and then we meet with the Good Samaritans. And the Good Samaritans, you know what they do? They elevate us. And when they elevate us, it's time for you to pollinate your ideas with the rest of the world. And in my humble view, I think I am a product of Africa that has been processed in Asia, packaged in America, and distributed throughout the world. And my key message to all of us is, let's reach deep into our baskets of hope and find the seeds that are hidden there and plant those seeds. Because this is not the Quicksilver cashback card from Capital One. No, this is a pumpkin seed, a seed that comes from my backyard, a seed that has unlimited potential to grow every minute, every day, every damn place. Now I'm asking you, ladies and gentlemen, what is in your basket? What is in your basket? In my basket, I know that I got some seeds and I want to plant them everywhere. I learned from Asia that you can count the number of seeds in a durian, but you cannot count the number of durians in a seed. In other words, you can count the number of seeds in a pumpkin, but you cannot count the number of pumpkins in a seed. So therefore, let's go out there and keep planting our seeds because we never know whom our seeds would feed, would encourage, would help someday. And I want to stop here and just give you a little musical note of encouragement because you never know. We may meet in person soon. We may not meet in person, but I trust that today's conversation should not be in vain. Thank you very much, ESU. I want to pass it back to you and take some questions if you don't mind. And probably with your permission, I can also open this famous drink from the Netherlands and start to consume. It should have been 33 export, which is famous in Cameroon, but I don't have 33 export here.
Well, thank you for that very dynamic and enjoyable presentation, Gideon. We do have some questions that have already come through and some, as well as some comments as well. I'll start with this question. It says, your stories have shed light on your journey. How has the use of English shaped your consciousness and awareness in the context of the pandemic?
In the context of the pandemic, I'll say my use of English, I bet, is very modest. My understanding of the language, notwithstanding the fact that it's still improving, has actually helped me to connect with people of different countries a lot more. I'm able to peer my eyes and get to understand what's happening in other parts of the world, whether it's Australia, whether it's New Zealand, whether it's countries in Asia that speak English as a second or third language. And it has allowed me to be able to commune, if you may, with more people from across the world. Had it been I've taken more time and spent more time in Chinese, in German, or in French, I would not have been able to connect with more people as I've been fortunate to connect with English language. So I would say English language has opened up more doors for me, more than any other language that I know of. Because I've, like, last time I checked, before COVID, been to almost 30 countries for work. And since COVID, of course, I'm only stuck here in my room. But I would say it has connected, the language has continued to connect me to more people the world over.
Excellent. So next question isn't really a question, but it's a statement, but from Dave Grissett in our New Orleans branch, who states rather that my grandparents were Presbyterian missionaries in Cameroon from 1920 to 1958 in the area of Metet. Thank you for your inspiring message and stories.
Can I give a comment right there?
Yes.
Thank you, David. I would say I've benefited from the work of your grandparents. Let me say this very, very candidly. My mom was an elder in a Presbyterian church. At the time it was called Basel Mission for more than 20 years. And all my formative years with all my headiness, I've been shaped by the work of that ministry more than anything else. And how did I get the name Gideon? You better guess this right, because mom, being a staunch Christian, even though she could not read or write, she made sure that all her children had biblical names. And I've made friends who have continued to applaud me for my name. I don't take no credit for it. It's my mom. Though she could not read or write, she had an ear for what is beautiful, for what is good. So thank you, David. I'd love to connect with you if you don't mind. And let's just share some ideas.
Actually, on the topic of names, Phil Williams from Charlottesville asks, in terms of your last name, what does it mean? Does it have a meaning?
Phil, thanks for the question. Guess what? I love Charlottesville. I when I was on the road, I came by your city many, many times, and I always made sure I found the time to go up to Jefferson's home up on the hill. But with respect to my name, if you are familiar with my clan, the clan names of my clan in Cameroon, and if you study it carefully, that name could take you to the place where you come from. So my name means coming from the rocky place. So if you come to my clan within the northwestern region of Cameroon, and you understand the naming of the tribes, the naming of the various families, you follow that name, you can get to the exact spot where I come from. And there are only 2 villages with that name. And now the name could be a lot more, it could be longer. But the short answer to that is, if you look at the derivatives, you look at the composition of a name, it could tell you where the person comes from. So I come from a rocky place, so I'm called For-mukwai.
Excellent. So our next question comes from Chung Xiao Zhang, who asks, when people prejudge us, should we explain?
I think there are better people on this forum that can answer that than I do. I found it really difficult to explain, because when you start to explain, it almost sounds like you are admitting some form of guilt. But at the same time, if it becomes like, let's say it doesn't end, and the person or the people keep coming back at you, then you have to find a moment to say, hold on a minute, let us get this straight. Because that's what happened to me in Portsmouth, in New Hampshire, because I felt like the same person was so petulant and so, it looks like she had a different agenda. So I wanted to set the record straight, not through the back channel, but at least publicly and politely. So in a way, ignore it if you can. But if it persists, then I think you should say, let us come to the table and clear this, so that in the interest of full disclosure, in the interest of clear consciences, let's clear this so that everybody can go home with a clear mind. So starting out, no need to explain. But if it persists, then find a way to clear the air. That would be my take. Maybe there'll be other answers.
So one of the other things that I see that we're getting some questions about is that people asking if they can contact you. Would you be comfortable sharing your email address or some contact information with attendees if they'd like to get into contact with you?
Oh, absolutely. I like to stay connected with people. I love people. I genuinely do. That's why the pandemic is taking a terrible toll on me. It bothers me that I can't get out there and meet people. And I would even open up and say, not only will I throw my email here, but I'll also invite, if you're comfortable, throw your email into the chat and I can reach out to you with respect to what I call Story Connect. Story Connect are the tales, the stories that I get from meeting people from all around the world. Every month, I send out a Story Connect newsletter talking about an unusual experience that I had, whether it's in Iraq, when I went to Iraq, or something that happened to me getting to the city of Abu Dhabi and not finding a hotel to sleep. And I will share those stories just to say, hey, it matters what happens to me, and I believe it matters what happens to you because I can learn from your personal experiences, and I hope in some way you can learn from mine. So if you don't mind, please drop in your email. I would be so delighted to connect with you, and I will send you a gift, Story Connect, which comes out every month. And also, more importantly, I also have a gift which has to do with storytelling, science of story connection, that I can send to you, and you can potentially use that in whatever work you are involved in. And yeah, so please feel free to drop in your email. I'll get it and I'll reach out to you and I'll put you on Story Connect, and let's stay in touch. It's a small world. It's a very, very, very small world.
So yeah, some people have already started to put their emails into the chat, so that's great. Thank you for that. And actually, I think that's a great segue, Gideon, into our giveaways for today, because we have 2 books. Would you like to give a little bit of background on the 2 books that we're going to be sending to 2 randomly selected attendees today?
Oh, thank you, Josh. 2 books. The first one I talked about it is no news anymore. One of the greatest books I've ever read was The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. And I'm following Mark Twain's footprints. I've been to Silver City in Nevada. And so if you have not read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, please go read it tonight. If not for your sake, for my sake, because I feel that in that book, Mark Twain has put the fingerprints of a genius who can connect across cultures, across boundaries. And I think there is no greater writer who has ever walked the face of the earth than Mark Twain. And the second one is a Mark Twain follower, a Mark Twain Academy lover, my humble self. I love Mark Twain so much, and I'm learning to tell my own stories. But from the time I started studying storytelling in 2003 in Singapore and started to get a little bit of gravitas in this topic, people have come up to me and say, what's your style? What's your approach? So I said, my approach is looking at both the artistic elements and the scientific elements of storytelling. So in 2015, I came up with a second book, which is about the science of story selling. How do you use stories to share ideas? How do you use stories to communicate complex ideas, especially from the world of science? As a former firefighter, I've used stories to communicate issues about fire safety, about emergency management. And it has given me a lot of opportunity in many, many places that I would never have been to. So this is one of the books. I would autograph this and send it out. Now, if you don't get it, one of the 2, I would also encourage you, maybe consider to drop me an email. I would send an autograph copy for you if you're not one of the 2 people that get lucky. So you'll get it, autograph copy, and you can keep it and you can see my ideas and we can stay in touch. Last but not least, you can also find me on LinkedIn, Gideon For-mukwai, Dr. Gideon For-mukwai, and then of course on Facebook, and my website is storywarrior.us. I'll drop it into the chat box, storywarrior.us.
Excellent. So while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and announce who the 2 winners are. So just to make sure that they are here. Yep. So the winner of your kind of a copy of Tom Sawyer, perhaps with a note that you leave in there, is actually someone who asked a question. It's Chun Xiao Sang. So you'll be receiving a copy of Tom Sawyer from Gideon. And the person, let me just make sure again. Yep. So Jean Soper, you'll be receiving a copy of Gideon's The Science of Storytelling book. So congratulations to both winners as well. I now actually want to bring in our executive director of the English Speaking Union to say kind of the final words here. I'll just bring her in, Karen Karpowicz. Karen?
Hi everyone. This was a wonderful presentation, Gideon. It was so inspiring, and it's so much at the essence of what the English Speaking Union is about. And the thing that struck me was your comment about planting seeds. And I think that I was inspired by that. And it's a good mantra to keep in your head about planting seeds and giving back. I also wanted to mention the fact that this is our 100th anniversary. The English Speaking Union is celebrating our 100th anniversary. And we too are doing a storytelling event on June 24th. And we're asking all of our members and all of our branches to help us create our 100 years through stories. And you're right, storytellers are really the glue that holds us all together, and stories are the things that connect us. So I just wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank you for your inspiring story. And I want to thank you for being a member of the ESU, because that's so important to us. And I also wanted to mention the fact, if you're not a member, it would be wonderful if you considered becoming one. I think on the actual survey that you'll fill out at the end of this, you have an opportunity of becoming a member, and we encourage that. So thank you again. And I wanted to mention we're coming on a very busy period in terms of happy hours. But next week, we're going to be talking about April 14th at 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Are you using English correctly? Which is something we all need to consider most of the time. And that's really a discussion from our Boston branch with the Athenaeum on rhetoric and prose. So I do encourage everyone to participate in that, because it sounds like a very interesting discussion. Thank you all again, and thank you again, Gideon. I hope we get an opportunity of meeting soon, okay, in person. Thank you. Okay.